Prologue, Beirut, August 1991. They'd been stood on alert since 0600. Moscow didn't call until 3, the hottest part of the day, in the hottest month, in what must have been the last non-air conditioning hotel in Beirut. But that was the GRU's style. They never failed to disappoint. Dima swung his legs off the bed, felt his head swim, picked up the receiver. 2,000 kilometers away, Palyov's voice full of anticipation. You set? For the last 9 hours. A red Peugeot, Jordanian plates. Where? There was a pause. Dima pictured him, his desk in Moscow littered with memos and telexes, all stamped urgent, most secret. 4 blocks from Kalzhiel's hotel, the Majestic Palace, a parking lot on a bomb site. That narrows it down. Half the city's a bomb site. The whole Iranian nuclear delegation is at the hotel, so it'll be swarming with their own security, but they're not permitted out of the grounds. Our information is Kalzhiel's all set. You won't have any problems. You always say that, and we always do. Palyov sighed. I assure you everything's in place. Kalzhiel thinks the Americans are coming for him, so there'll be no resistance. Just get in and drive. Tell him there's a plane waiting just across the border and show him the documentation as we agreed. Once you're on the move, if he realizes who you are, what can you do? Just have the autojet ready. The chemical kosh. Always the GRU's answer to any problem. And if there is a problem, kill him. Better Iran's nuclear prodigy dead than the Americans really do get their hands on him. Palyov rang off. Dima dropped the phone back onto its cradle and looked across at Solomon. It's a go. Solomon sat cross-legged on his bed, the disassembled pieces of his U.S.-sourced Colt 45 laid out in front of him. He didn't react, just glared, his default expression. Still so young, 20, but projecting an intelligence that would have been intimidating in someone twice his age. Once Dima had been his mentor, but Solomon didn't need mentors now. Beside him, Dima felt old and inferior. Not a good feeling before it hit. For a few seconds, neither spoke as they listened to the overhead fan stirring the soupy city air. Near the window, a fly was noisily trying in vain to separate itself from the slow, gluey death on the wax ribbon. Outside, in the traffic, horns blared, the collective frustration of Beirut's drivers at the permanent gridlock. Then, without warning, Solomon's face split into a mirthless grin. You know the part I'm looking forward to? When Kalzhiel realizes he's not headed to the land of the free. I want to see that look. Not for the first time, Dima wondered about his protege. Particularly disturbing was the pleasure Solomon took in others' misfortune. And on this, his first GRU field assignment, how come he managed to stay so cool, Dima wondered. He got up, went to the bathroom, sneaked a sip of vodka from his flask in his wash bag, just a small one to see him through the next few hours. He returned to the room, picked up his 45, holstered it. Solomon frowned. You cleaned it? Yes, it's fine. Solomon raised the barrel of his own gun and examined it for the umpteenth time. With all the dust here, plus these 45s are notorious. No-all, thought Dima. It was the ammunition they should be worrying about. Bootleg bullets with a weak charge. Why should they use this American crap anyway? Palyov's obsession with disguise. Never mind the weapons, just get the intel right. He glanced at the ejected mag and the rounds. Solomon had scored a cross on the nose of each bullet. He was using JHP rounds for maximum damage. Dima's hope was that there was no shots fired today. Let's do it. They took a cab, in opal, with several different color panels. The interior stank of sweat in the driver's lunch. Solomon sat, arms folded, sullen as a teenager forced to take out the trash. If we were CIA, we'd have our own car and our own driver, he said in perfect American English, and our own radio net. Maybe you're choosing the wrong side. He said nothing as if he was thinking the same. Look on the bright side, Dima tapped his chest. At least we got these polo shirts with the logo, and the chinos, he slapped Solomon's thigh. Yeah, courtesy of the souk run up by a kid cross-legged at a sewing machine who should be at school. They look about as American as falafel. Kalzhiel won't notice. He's a physicist. He's been in America once. You haven't. Dima gave him a reproachful look. Solomon's attitude had nearly gotten him flung out of his fast-track Spetsnaz training. From day one, he'd been marked down as trouble. Always awkward, always challenging his tutors, always a better idea of his own. They complained to Dima, to Palyov, and then to Dima some more. Dima could only blame himself. Solomon was his find, plucked by him from the blasted slopes above Kandahar. In the dying days of Russia's futile occupation, he had been part of the great diaspora of the youth who flocked to Afghanistan to help defeat the evil empire. Dima operated undercover, spotted the boy's potential, and turned it. His calm, his discipline, his amazing facility with languages, and its ruthlessness were precious assets. The GRU needed him. Russia needed him. Dima insisted. Okay, they said. When his 2 years were up, he's on your watch. This was Solomon's first assignment, and Dima was having doubts. They left the cab a few blocks from the hotel, took a walk past it, found the bomb site parking lot. Just the short distance through the sticky smog had already drenched him in sweat. There was no sign of the Peugeot, but he spotted a small bar opposite. As if pulled by a magnetic force, Dima headed straight for it, slammed a $5 bill on the counter, and ordered a double. What are you having? Solomon lurked by the doorway. Just water. You have any vices at all? Solomon gave him a blank glare that seemed to say, does it look like it? And again, Dima felt uneasy. On a shelf above the bar was a small black and white TV, an image of Gorbachev released from house arrest, but neutered, humiliated. The gray pope now. As hopeless as the Soviet Union crumbled around him, the revolution he had started careering out of control, where would it end? All Dima could envisage was chaos, hardly the great socialist dream he had promised Solomon when he was signing up for. Maybe Khalil will help put us back on top. Dima tapped the bulge under his jacket. Think about it. Portable nuclear capability. Dima's irony was lost on Solomon. For the first time that day, the boy's eyes lit up. The idea had caught his imagination as it had fired up Palyov and the rest of their masters back in Moscow. Dima slapped down another $5 bill and ordered the same again. He warned Palyov there'd be a problem, and now, as a Peugeot came into view, he saw what it was. Coming slowly up the street, it almost grounded to a halt as a wheel hit one of the many potholes. The car was more than fully laden. Fuck, he's got his whole family in there. There was a fresh scrape all down the side, exposing bright metal, and the offside end of the front bumper was bent forward as if it had gotten entangled with another vehicle. The car swerved erratically before bottoming as it mounted the curb. Wait, Dima hissed at Solomon, who was starting to cross the street. We need to check if he's being followed. That second vodka didn't feel so great now. From the other side of the road, they could see Khalil at the wheel, his wife behind him, heads twisting around, looking, panicking. That's plan A, out of the window, thought Dima. What the hell was plan B? Nothing else came up the street behind them. Dima and Solomon walked towards the car. As soon as Khalil saw them, he leapt out. A wiry man, his shirt collar way too big for his scrawny neck. Hi, over here. This guy has no idea. Dima motioned to him to cool it, get back in the Peugeot. As they got nearer, they could see the back seat was full of children. Dima felt the contents of his stomach rearrange themselves. We'll have to kill them, said Solomon. Sedate him first, then get him out of the car. He'll never know what happened. Another fucking fiasco. Blame Palyov as he might, in the end, Dima knew it was his own fault for agreeing to the mission. It just wasn't in his nature to say no, especially these days with all the old guarantees of employment being torn up. Khalil was back in the car, window down, eyes bulging with expectation. One of the children in the back was wailing. Mr. Khalil, I'm Dave, said Dima. Dave? Repeating Khalil, frowning, as if he was trying out the name. The message said Dean. Shit, thought Dima. What did they agree? Dave, Dean, Dima, not a lot of difference. He felt his head clouding. Maybe the vodka hadn't been such a good idea, or maybe he should have had a third. The wife leaned across her husband, frowned at Dima from her veil, snapped at Khalil in Farsi. I can smell liquor on his breath. Suddenly Solomon was at Dima's side, edging him away from the car window, wearing a broad grin like he had never seen on his face before. Hey folks, how y'all doing today? My name's Dean, and we'll be taking you from here on to your destination, ma'am. If you step out of the car, please, and your little ones. If there was any more to Solomon's sales patter, Dima wasn't going to hear it. Nor were the Khalils, because what happened next rendered their feeble cover story redundant. A pair of new but dusty Chevy Suburbans swung into the view and slewed to a halt in the middle of the street. 8 doors swung open and 8 Caucasian men in t-shirts, shorts, and shades stepped out. All armed, 4 covered, 4 approached. 2 of those covered took aim at Dima, and Khalil's wife screamed so loud Dima's ears rang. Solomon was no longer at his side. At the first sign of trouble, he had made himself invisible among the parked vehicles. Hands in the air, cowboy, one of the shaded ones shouted, repeating the order in Arabic for good measure. Dima fumbled for his .45, aimed, squeezed, missed, aimed again, and it jammed. A fraction of a second later, and the gun was gone from his hand, which was now spurting blood. The Yank had shot it clean out of his grip. Dima dropped to the ground as the Americans got to the other side of the car, opening the doors, reaching in and scooping up Khalil's family into the bosom of democracy. Dima cursed Palyov for a stupid, ill-planned, under-resourced mission. He cursed the .45, the 1 or 2 many vodkas, and pretty much everything else about his shitty life so far. A flicker of movement between a parked Datsun and a Mercedes, Solomon, behind the cars, choosing a position, and from under the Peugeot he saw one of the Americans inching towards him around the car, taking no chances. With his good right hand, Dima wrestled the Beretta from the left pocket of his chinos and fired at one of the American's feet, just as he lifted it. He heard the doors slamming, the Americans retreating. Family secured, good to go, go now. Better dead than the Americans get their hands on him. Dima hadn't shared that with Solomon. Didn't need to. Solomon would know. The bullets, that family, the Americans whose foot Dima had just missed swung into view. Big jaw, Zapata mustache, mirror shades. You commie cunt. The American lifted his M9, took aim. The air between them exploded. The American sank to his knees, his forehead cratered by the bullet that had entered the back of his head and chewed its way out the front. His mouth had turned into a perfect O as if preparing to sing. He hovered there for a second, then he slumped on top of Dima, pinning him down, the contents of his smashed head emptying out over his face. There were more shots from Solomon's position, more screams and shrieks. "Fucking out of here right now!" Doors slamming and furious wheel spin, and then silence. Solomon lifted the corpse off Dima, wiping his face with the fake polo shirt. Dima breathed out. "You get Kilgeel? You stopped them taking him, didn't you?" Solomon shook his head slowly. "How come?" He prodded the American corpse with his toe. He was either shoot Kilgeel or him. Dima let a couple of seconds pass while the meaning of what Solomon was saying sank in. "You saved my life." No comment from Solomon, just a glare of contempt. Eventually he nodded. "Yeah, I fucked up."